Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the Franchising 360 show. And what better way to spend a Friday evening than with my wonderful host here, Danielle Wright. And I am Tim Parmeter. And as always on the Franchising 360 show, we are going to take a 360-degree view into the world of franchising. And a lot of what we've talked about so far is some of the really kind of basics about franchising, but more about what is it like to look for a franchise and things to think about. But Danielle, if we're going to find a franchise to own, there has to be a franchise.
Correct.
So I think today we have a great question, and it was Sam in Colorado, and that could be Samuel or Samantha. I'm not sure which, but Sam asked, I own a thriving wellness business and would like to turn it into a franchise. Is that possible? And how do I do it? And first of all, Sam asked two questions.
Lots of stuff.
Sam only gets one mug.
One mug.
So Sam, coming your way. And thanks for the question. But can you and how do you do this? So can it be done? Clearly, the answer is
yes.
Yes.
Because I was going to challenge you on the can. Can, yes.
Yes. And so what we want to talk about tonight is what are some things that we need to think about? Because as always in franchising, it's a lot more than people are going to initially think about. But there are 4,000 plus franchise brands around the United States. So they all started as just a regular old business to begin with.
Yes, they would all start as a regular business.
So we can make that turn. And there's a lot of things we got to go through with this. But it's kind of, if somebody was going to say, I've got this great business like Sam, like when do I start thinking about, is this possible? What are some kind of maybe key triggers or metrics that they should think about?
What makes it great? You're using some words. I'm like,
great. I'm just reading what Sam said.
So as I stumble across myself, because there's so much, having a business functioning, operating for a period of time, having some history in a market are things that consider as you're operating your business. My suggestion, and this is just Danielle talking to Tim, maybe for Sam, you don't just open a business from day one and say, I'm a franchise. Right. You could, but that goes against some of the stuff that we were talking about, right? Business in a box, operations manuals, all of those things. So there's a lot of little pieces that one needs to put together. But the reality is, if you have a business that's been functioning for a year or two, you have market viability. You can speak to how many customers I've had and what are my average checks, and not just how much revenue I've brought in and how much money I'm making from it. So those are just some pieces I think we're going to talk about today.
Definitely that proof of concept, correct? And we've kind of half joked about, the great business that could be Tim's Sandwich Shop.
Yes,
right?
We bring up Tim's Sandwich Shop frequently.
But I guess, again, like you said, I could go, hey, I'm going to start this like location number one and immediately franchise. But that's not really the goal. The goal is to start it, make sure I know what the heck I'm doing first. Right.
Because there's just so many things that you're going to learn along the way. We even tell franchise owners, and I'm sure you do with your clients, speak up and say that first 2 years are all about learning and actually making mistakes. You're going to make more mistakes in those first years. And that's why people generally go to a franchise, because I get to kind of bridge the gap on the mistake side. But proof of concept is big, but what does proof of concept mean? Right. I can ask a lot of questions to the question that you're asking. So I would recommend to anybody, be operating for a handful of years. Do all of the things that would be called a mistake and jump the hurdles and bridge the gaps and make sure you're documenting all of it. Now, you could start a business and say, hey, the ultimate goal is to franchise, and doesn't mean that you're going to get a franchise from day one, but go with that in mind. Like, I'm sure there's a book that I know that I can never quote who said it, but start with the end in mind. And if that's the case, then if you want to be a franchise, go in thinking that to begin with. Like, what do I need to have?
Right. Well, and we talk about that business in the box and how one of the main reasons people would become a franchise owner versus starting their own is the plan to follow. Right. And part of the proof of concept is like, yeah, my plan works. And we figured out, well, this was the plan day one. Yeah, we were good here and here, not so much over here, and then be able to kind of adjust. So when you are looking at somebody coming in as a franchise owner, you kind of got that down for them, right? So let's talk a little bit more about, I know one of the biggest things is in that plan and that overall kind of operations manual, and there's a lot of things that can go into that. for people to think about before they turn their business into a franchise.
Right.
So let's hit that up when we come back, and dive deeper into that operations manual.
There's so many things to dive in here. So good topic.
Excited. We'll be diving. It'll be right after the break here on the Franchising 360 show. All right, we are back here on the Franchising 360 show, and tonight we are talking about what about when folks have a business and how do they take that business and turn it into a franchise? Who knows, that thing you've got going right now could be the next, I don't know, McDonald's for
there
example.
We go again.
So, and so we were talking right before the break.
Yeah.
One of the things is that proof of concept, and we want to get into the operations manual and how important that is. But come back to the proof of concept for a second, because if it is a retail location, that may have some other things that factor into this a little bit as well.
So we were talking on the break, right? And I'm like, oh man, I should have said this, because it's not just, hey, I have one location and it does well in my community. And a lot of franchises are like, hey, you have to be invested in your community and participate and be the go-to, right? And so yes, it works in that market, but sometimes you have to stretch yourself and then do a second location. So I think one of the things we're going to talk about today that we've discussed is it doesn't just take X, Y, and Z. It also takes this magical little thing called money.
Money, yes.
And investing in yourself. So the reality is, in a retail or even non-retail or non-brick and mortar, we say retail a lot, and we
got to start
recently
brick
learned that maybe we should not be saying that. But from a brick and mortar perspective or a logistics type of business, home service, you know your market like the back of your hand. What you don't know are other markets and how it will be received. And that's a tester kind of into going into the franchise space. And what's also great about that is then you have maybe something you can sell and bring in your first franchisee into something operating. But that's a whole nother tangent
Well, because you're going to have potential candidates looking at your business and go, well, yes, you have this one location. You've lived there.
You deal with this a lot,
right? You've lived there your whole life. You know, it's your all your people in your community, your friends, your family, your kids' school. Well, of course it worked there because basically there's all your friends and family. What about if we go across town where you know nobody?
Right.
That's a big. Not that it can't work. I'm
sure that happens a lot, right? Because I think you show clients a lot of franchise brands that maybe have one location or two locations. They're in their infancy.
Right.
I've worked with a brand recently that has 6 locations, and they were corporate locations, and she sold them to franchise owners, and now she has franchise owners. So there's a lot to go into, hey, how do I turn my business into a franchise, which we're going to talk about, but what makes it the best or the opportune franchise opportunity for people like you, what you work with.
Even that proof of concept, sometimes if it's the, like, oh, it's an ice cream franchise, but it started in Florida, it'll be seasonal. People are or it's the landscape, the pool cleaning franchise.
Right.
There's a former client of ours at FranCoach in Detroit, Michigan. With the pool cleaning franchise, he did over $1 million in revenue in his second year in Detroit, Michigan, right? Like, oh, it would never work there.
There's cold there, right? Like,
yes, like the white snuff that falls from the sky this time of year. Does that really fall
in Detroit? I'm not sure.
I think so. But
I don't visit Detroit often, but I'm coming for you, Detroit. It's fine.
But when we look at go back to that operations manual. So the proof of concept, we could probably go nonstop for the next couple hours talking about all the little things that should be in an operations manual.
The nuances.
But give people kind of a highlight of what you're talking about with that.
So I think we've talked about this before. So if you're going to consider your business, you're running Joe's Plumbing, right? And how do I make this a business in a box for someone to buy? You got to document everything, like how to turn on the lights, like how to, sadly or unfortunately, you have to tell someone how to put gas in it. Like what kind, is it a gas truck or is it a diesel truck? So you document everything you do in an everyday business. You're not going to document the one-off cases, but something that someone would need to know, hey, I need to do this. Hey, I need to do that. Like from a marketing perspective, what kind of marketing are you doing? Maybe not how much you're investing, but hey, this is where we suggest you put your dollars. But from an operations manual perspective, it's like putting together that furniture from IKEA.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just pictures. Like there's got to be words, and someone's got to be able. We
need the Lego instructions more than the IKEA ones. But and I think things like part of that operations manual, the buying power, or just even like Where do we buy the napkins, or like all of those, like
right.
how we slice the tomatoes, every last thing has to be documented.
And
correct?
why you have to do that is because in order to offer your franchise for sale for someone to buy it, you have to provide for a table of contents inside a document called the franchise disclosure document and kind of tell people, this is how you lay out the business, right? I've worked with health, wellness, and beauty a lot. And think about all of the things that go in. I got to flip on the wax for waxing someone's brows. I got to go in and clean the combs if I'm going to do hair. Like, there are pieces to
and how do you, not just that you have to, but how you do it.
How you do it is a specific.
How long does it take? A bit. So somebody's sitting there going, okay, well, I got some of that stuff. How long would you think it takes for somebody to truly be able to properly document all of that?
My recommendation is always pay someone to do it. Like, it's
right.
back to the money piece.
Right.
Pay someone to do it that specializes. There are organizations that we work with. I'm working with a group right now, go Ole Miss, and she has a smoothie concept. And she could go and document all of it, and it could probably take us 2 years to actually pull the documentation together. But there's a third-party company that she can utilize that go in and shadow everything that she does for probably 2 weeks, and then can turn around a document in no time.
Because I think it's also when you have that third party, yes, I know what to do, right? But all of a sudden now they don't. So, like, again, it's like
you're going to forget things, right? It's just second nature.
The Einstein quote.
When you wake up, right? You got to get up and you got to brush your teeth.
Right.
Does someone stand there every day and tell you to do that?
No, sometimes
maybe
you do.
Sometime.
But no, it's like the Einstein quote, something about like when you're explaining things, do it so like a third grader can understand.
Yes, I love that
quote.
And
that's where that third party's coming in to be able to really make sure. Have you taught this the right way?
Well, and to document the right things.
Right.
Where I could go for hours on all the things you should probably have in it, but you don't necessarily need all of those pieces.
Correct. And so one of the things you talked about, that operations manual and the table of contents, leads us into the FDD, the franchise disclosure document, the franchise agreement, all of those things.
Got a fun fact for that here later.
Let's touch on that fun fact and a couple other things to turn your business into a franchise. That's here on the Franchising 360 show. All right, we are back on the Franchising 360 show. Tim Parmeter with Danielle Wright.
That's me.
And we are discussing how to take that amazing business you have and turn it into a franchise. We talked about the proof of concept.
Yep.
We talked a little bit about the operations manual, even though we could go forever on that. But then there's kind of a legal component of this.
Legal.
I know, right?
Legals and everything.
They just kill it all because we're going to need something on the mug that's of the coffee cup that says, hey, contents might be hot, in case somebody didn't understand that.
That's kind of cute.
So there are a few different aspects of the legal side of things.
Yes.
We talked about one, just kind of like, I think you kind of threw it out there. You'll hear the letters FDD, which stands for.
We use a lot of acronyms in franchising.
Yeah, there's a whole like list of those that you got to memorize.
Everywhere.
So FDD is a what?
Franchise disclosure document.
Franchise disclosure document.
Yes.
So what is a franchise disclosure document?
So there's this governing board called the FTC, which means
the Federal Trade Commission.
So they regulate franchising
and trade commission stuff.
Sure, whatever. And so there's a franchising rule in place set by the Federal Trade Commission going back years, like to the 70s. And the document used to be called something really funny, but I can't say it here, so we'll just put that. Email us if you really want to know what it is.
I don't know what they were thinking with the acronym, because it sounds like a bad word that starts with the letter F. That was not really meant to be that, but that was the acronym,
correct.
Right?
So in 2007, they changed that. So we weren't saying those those letters anymore to the franchise disclosure document. You have to have, if you want to sell your business as a franchise, you have to have a franchise disclosure document. This gives any consumer the opportunity to review the necessary information for them to make a sound business decision on moving forward with the franchise. So an FDD is the legal documentation that a business has to have in place to be able to sell you a franchise. Note, if they don't have that, be cautious.
Run. So the Other piece of that then too is also the franchise agreement that people are going to sign that kind of gets tied into there.
Yeah, everything that they would need to know is in the FDD.
And there is so much stuff to talk about that it is not segment worthy, it is episode worthy.
Yeah, it's probably multiple episodes worthy.
I don't know, I don't know, maybe next week come back and we'll go into the FDD a little bit more. But so that can be daunting when you see one of these things. It's 200 plus pages.
Yes.
How in the world does
3.
somebody just turning their business into a franchise supposed to know how to do this?
Well, most of the time, like I said earlier, you're not doing it by yourself.
Right.
Like you're
really,
hiring
please don't.
someone. Don't just go to your regular uncle is an attorney and I want an FDD, right? Like there are franchise attorneys, people that specialize in franchising, and then there are ones that specialize in helping you do that, create that document. He said 200 pages. There are some that are 1,000 pages long. The dreaded word that you use, McDonald's,
right.
Tends to be a lot larger. Been around a long time, lots of different avenues to open that business model. But you go to an attorney and they're going to walk you through all the things that you need. Most of the time it's like packaged together, like, hey, let's work on the ops manual. Let's put all of those pieces together. I wouldn't always say start with the FDD. I would say start with understanding how your business works and how you would explain it to somebody.
Which is kind of why we talked about proof of concept, then operations manual, then the legal side. And you and I both know there are some companies out there that will go, oh, hey there, Pete the plumber. We'll turn Pete the plumber into franchise. We'll get you an FDD and you're good. Not entirely accurate.
Correct. Make sure you're vetting out or validating those resources first. Right. Whatever anybody's trying to look on the show, you have a business, I want to consider it. Talk to franchising professionals. I don't ever do a plug here, but
createashift.net
or just
I'll do it for you.
Franchising 360 show, put the info in. I will gladly have a call. We'll talk through it. I'll give you some of our referral partners, people that I would trust and use myself. And we have used ourselves for our businesses.
Well, and again, part of like, not to make light of this, but why we do this show is taking that 360 degree. It's not just the FDD. There's so much more that you need.
And I've seen so many people that go into, hey, I want to franchise my business. And like you said, just get taken. Like they spend a lot of money and they come out of it. Yeah, I got an FDD, but I've sold no franchises. I have no marketing support. I have no interested buyers. And if the goal is really, I want to sell this as a franchise and grow my system because it's great, then work with the right people and put the right places.
So it's not just, I have an FDD, therefore thousands of people are going to want to become a franchise owner of my brand.
But that's probably, how many people do you place in brands like that?
You and I both know some kind of sad stories where people did think that. And again, there's so much more to it. And which really kind of leads to the last piece, which is the good old dollar.
Yeah, nothing comes free.
We need some money to, and let's come back.
Except apparently my time.
Right. Well, that is true. But I got you a mug.
Yeah, thanks.
So, but let's come back and talk a little bit about kind of the elephant in the room with franchising. Always, hey, it's going to cost money to turn it into a franchise,
money,
and then to really get it to where you need to be. Yeah. So let's talk about the good old dollar on the Franchising 360 show right after this. Welcome back on the Franchising 360 show. Tonight, we are talking about how to turn your amazing business into a franchise. Danielle, we have talked about the little things like proof of concept.
Yes.
Kind of need to make sure it works first.
Here's our checklist. Let's go through it. Yep.
Operations manual and everything that somebody has to do to own this thing. We got a franchise disclosure document and
legal.
But what we're really missing here is money.
Yeah.
So it's not free to do this.
No.
So
unless you've got really great relationships with people that provide these services and you've just, maybe bartered, but
probably not, right?
Probably not.
There's two sides of this. There's the money it takes to do that operations manual. And again, we already have to have the business first.
Yeah. You're building the box,
right?
Is what you're saying.
And so the proof of concept, the operations manual, all of the legal stuff, that costs money.
Yes.
The piece people forget is now I have all of that. Now I need money for everything else. So talk about some of those things, right? Because we don't just magically get people.
Yeah. No, you don't. Well, you challenge.
I mean, not very many.
Well, because the best proof of concept is when your customers want to become your franchise owners.
Right.
So the reality is a lot of businesses that do turn themselves into a franchise, you're actually going to get quite a few of your customers that want to open a business. What's the struggle with that? How's that max capacity?
Right. That's your local area.
Right.
How do we take this to the other 49
right.
states?
And you're going to really, where do you put them in your local market?
Right.
Where it's not going to hurt your business.
Correct.
So there are things to think about when you're saying, hey, let me take that customer and let them have a franchise. Well, where are you going to put it?
Right.
So from a financial perspective, I hear that a lot. Like, hey, I've got a couple of franchise owners. I've invested all of this money, very large dollar amount,
right,
into becoming a franchise, but now I have no interested buyers.
Right.
And so there's the lovely group of franchise consultants. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Aren't you one of those?
I am. FranCoach.net, by the way.
Holy. And so you can go with them, but
right.
it's not an inexpensive pathway.
But it's still all about like marketing and lead gen, just in a different way.
In a different way. You're getting a different type of consumer. You're getting a different type of buyer. So you have to have money to invest in that.
There's a little bit of misconception sometimes that as a franchisor, that franchise fee you're going to get, like, oh, let me just stick that in my pocket. But that's where all the money comes from. Once you do all of the work and the time and the effort to find that person who wants to be a franchise owner, now you've got to, I don't know, like onboard them, train them, support them,
all of the
which
things.
is also not free.
Correct. So when we say you need money, it's not that I'm trying to be crashing a dream, right? But you do, like, you need to have the infrastructure. Are you the person running the day-to-day of your current business? Do you have a team? Do you need the team?
Right.
Yes. So if you use a third party to help you do this, which there are a lot of groups out there that do, they're going to walk you through a budget of what that needs to look like. So you're not going in blind, but no, you could do it, bootstrap it and try. Not a lot of brands do. Right. But you have to probably rewind and think, how much does it cost me to do all of that?
Well, and then kind of what are those goals, right? Do you want to just, do I want to kind of surround myself with other owners in the state? Do I want, like with any business, what are my goals out of this, right? And if you want, hey, I want 500 locations in the next 5 years, you could, but that's going to take even more money and infrastructure and all of those things.
Like anything, you need a good plan.
We need a good plan, right? So we know it's going to take proof of concept. We know we need an operations manual because there's a lot of stuff going on in here.
Document how to do it.
Right. We got all the legal stuff.
Got to make sure you're allowed to do it.
And then we need money.
And you got to be able to afford to do it.
We need the money. And then again, part of that plan, if there's going to be a plan for owners, we want that franchisor to have that plan of what they want. And even some of that support you talk about, yes, maybe you hire, marketing or training, or somebody's got to work with that lead from a kind of a sales standpoint. You can hire those people, but you can also find ways to kind of outsource that at the beginning as well, right?
Right.
So, and if anybody wants to learn more about that, becoming a franchise owner, or becoming a franchisor, well, franchise owner too, but today we're talking about franchisor.
We're here. I promise. It's Friday.
The franchising360show.com. There's a cute little QR code now. We're so like hip, is what the kids call it. Also, createashift.net is Danielle's business that does this all the time. We hit on the legal side, the FTD and the franchise agreement. Let's dive into that next Friday and I know, right? You ready?
Yeah, I love that stuff.
Okay, we'll get something different in our mug for that one because that's going to take some effort.
Maybe for you, yeah.
But for now, that's how you can become a franchise. Or next week, we're going to talk about all the legal stuff here on the Franchising 360 show. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next Friday night.